everyone, it's Billy Rude from FIFTY8 magazine, and thank you for watching The Art of Consciousness, the Sea of Light. The human being is a survival machine, largely powered by chemicals and genetic coding. The brain is a discrete organ in the home of consciousness, which is also largely driven by chemistry, the communication of cells and the coding of DNA. Man is essentially isolated from his world, and his mind is isolated from his body. Time and space are finite, universal orders. Nothing travels faster than the speed of light. The communication of the world did not occur in the visible realm, but in the subatomic realm. Cells and DNA communicate through frequencies. The brain perceives and makes its own record of the world in pulsating waves. A substructure underpins the universe that is essentially a recording medium of everything, providing a means for everything to communicate with everything else. People are indivisible from their environment. Living consciousness is not an isolated entity. It creates order in the rest of the world. And the consciousness of human beings has incredible powers to heal ourselves, to heal the world, and in a sense to make it as we wish to be. These discoveries of science have been proven since the 70s. By the study of the zero-point field, the quantum field, or the force in quantum mechanics. This scientific revolution is proof of the end of dualism in every sense. This is science approving God, a higher collective consciousness, exists. That means there is no longer two truths, the truth of science and religion, but a unified vision of the world. And in today's video, I will share with you information about the discovery of quantum physics and the study of the small, these subatomic particles, and how they can get us closer to the mysteries of our own being, how we think, why we get ill, and the power of you and your divine director. And quanta means the study of the small, or packets of energy. And physics is a science concerned with the nature and properties of matter and energy. This includes heat, light, radiation, sound, electricity, magnetism, and the structure of atoms. Quantum physics and mechanics is the discovery that particles are discrete packets of energy with wave-like properties, which is a branch of physics dealing with atomic and subatomic systems. And these are the pioneers of quantum physics. They were true pioneers into the metaphysical territory, which is the study of the unseen. And their theories were if electrons were connected everywhere at once, this implied something profound about the nature of the world at large. And they researched into classical philosophical texts in their attempt to grasp a deeper truth about the subatomic world they were observing. Pauli examined psychoanalysis and archetypes in the Kabbalah, Bohr, the Tao in Chinese philosophy, Schrödinger in Hindu philosophy, and Heisenberg, the Platonic theory of ancient Greece.
Where are the wires?
Exactly.
What they discovered is at our most elemental, we are not a chemical reaction, but an energetic charge.
Hold out other hand.
What's conducting the electricity?
Our bodies, Mr. Angier, are quite capable of conducting and indeed producing energy.
Human beings and all living things are a coalescence of energy, in a field of energy connected to every other thing in the world. This pulsating energy field is the central engine of our being and our consciousness. This unseen field is the force, rather than germs or genes, that finally determines whether we are healthy or ill. The force must be tapped into in order to heal. We are attached and engaged, inseparable from our world, and our only fundamental truth is our relationship with it. And the field, as Einstein once said it, is the only reality.
Albert Einstein said that more than 50 years ago. And it couldn't be more relevant than it is today. Not merely to cure disease, but to end poverty and hunger, to heal the planet, and build a better future for all of us.
The field is a matrix which connects two or more points in space via gravity or electromagnetism. The force is represented by ripples in the field, or waves. An electromagnetic field is an electrical and magnetic field which intersect, sending out waves of energy at the speed of light. An electric and magnetic field forms around any electrical charge, which is a surplus or deficiency of electrons. Both electrical and magnetic fields have two polarities, positive and negative, and both will cause any other charged object to be attracted or repelled, depending on whether the charges are opposite, positive or negative, or the same, positive or negative. The field is considered that area of space where this charge and its effects can be detected. This sea of light and energy is echoed in the Bible of God's first dictum, "Let there be light," out of which matter was created. And everything in our world, anything you hold in your hand, no matter how dense, how heavy, or how large, on its most fundamental level boils down to a collection of electrical charges interacting with the background sea of electromagnetic and other energetic fields, a kind of electromagnetic drag force. As they would write later, mass was not equivalent to energy. Mass was energy, or even more fundamentally, there is no mass. There is only charge. And health is a state of perfect subatomic communication, and ill health was a state where communication breaks down. We are ill when our waves are out of sync. Think of your brain as a piano. When we observe something in the world, certain portions of the brain resonate at certain specific frequencies. At any point of attention, our brain presses only certain notes, which trigger strings of a certain length and frequency. This information is then picked up by the ordinary electrochemical circuits of the brain, just as the vibrations of the strings eventually resonate through the entire piano. One of the most important aspects of waves is that they are encoders and carriers of information. When the two waves are in phase and overlap each other, technically called interference, the combined amplitude of the waves is greater than each other's individual amplitude. The signal gets stronger. This amounts to an imprinting or exchange of information called constructive interference. If one is peaking when the other is not, they tend to cancel each other out, a process called destructive interference. Once they've collided, each wave contains information in the form of energy coding about the other, including all the other information it contains. And interference patterns amount to a constant accumulation of information, and waves have a virtually infinite capacity for storage. If all subatomic matter in the world is interacting constantly with this ambient ground state energy field, the subatomic waves of the quantum field are constantly imprinting a record of the shape of everything. As the harbinger and imprinter of all wavelengths and all frequencies, the quantum field is a kind of shadow of the universe for all time, a mirror image and record of everything that ever was. So in a sense, the vacuum is the beginning and the end of everything in the universe, the alpha and the omega.
Imagine such an entity with a full range of human emotion, even self-awareness. Some scientists refer to this as the singularity. I call it transcendence. The path to building such a superintelligence requires us to unlock the most fundamental secrets of the universe. What is the nature of consciousness?
And consciousness is a global phenomenon that occurred everywhere in the body and not simply in our brains. Consciousness, at its most basic, is coherent light, and subatomic particles exist in all possible states until disturbed by us, which is because we observe them or measure them. This is when these subatomic particles settle down into something real, into matter. And the one observing this field of subatomic particles is human consciousness, is what is central to consider, as it is the cause to what sets those particles into motion, into matter. And all around us is an invisible field, also known as the force, or this quantum field, or the 0-point energy field, an ocean of microscopic vibrations in the space between all things. Everything in nature starts with this moving sea of energy, a vast quantum field. This is what connects everything, this invisible web. And humans are packets of quantum energy, and we are constantly exchanging information with this bountiful quantum field. This explains how our brain creates thought and feelings. This cognitive functioning has to do with the quantum information pulsing through our entire body as we interact with these subatomic particles we resonate with in our own personal realities. This is why what we do and think matter. They literally create matter, and subatomic particles are vibrating, pulsing, and almost schizophrenic and behaving like particles, either in a wave or spread out. They are also omnipresent and infinite, so this suggests that the consciousness of the observer brought the observed object into being. Nothing in the universe exists as an actual thing independent of our own perception of it. Every moment of every day, we are creating our world, a reality. What we think is a stable, static universe is in fact a sea of light fleetingly popping in and out of existence. This sea of light, the quantum field, represents a vast unharnessed energy source. It is the space that is invisible, and the atmosphere around you is a field of energy and potentials. Our bodies are made up of these subatomic particles, and these subatomic particles are called atoms, which have a nuclei, which is composed of protons. Inside a proton is a quark. Atoms, when they come together, create gross matter, which then creates molecules, which then creates tissue. And every atom and part of it has a mind. It is energy, which is consciousness in motion. So the visible is made from the invisible. The more we can understand the relationship between mind and matter, all we have to do is change our mind to change what we see.
Always remember, your focus determines your reality.
An atom is the availability of potential. The sixth plane is the quark field, the fifth is the proton field, and the fourth is the closure of the nuclei. And the first, second, and third planes of matter and antimatter are electrons and positrons. The smaller the particle, the more powerful the energy. The energy that is unfolding in the splitting of the nucleus is the coiled energy that has been tightened down through the slowing of time. So these 7 levels of reality are hidden in the particle, and every electron that moves around this atom is because we allow it to move around it. They are your attachments, and these particles are energy waves collapsing with an orbital light which look like little lights, which are electrons. But if we can focus on the electrons, we could reverse the spin around the atom with our focused consciousness. So what affects this field? Thought is a wave of energy. When we have a thought, it adds or takes away these electrons, which changes the nature of its energy. Thought is created by the observer, our divine director in our head that watches every thought we create. When you have a thought, our observer uses that energy to change this field of energy around us, which creates our reality, our real. And our divine director observes upon a field of energy. Then that energy collapses to form what the observer expects, which is you. Every solid object is made solid by the observer and creator of that object and their beliefs. No matter what you think, it affects energy, and it can either be freeing energy, which is the past, or collapsing it, which is your future. Whatever you are thinking is constantly modulating or holding together what you expect to see, because you expect to feel it, to experience it. And everyone is doing this, even if they do not know it. And we are always adjusting and modifying this state of nature, which is called reality.
There is a reason that we are here. The voices and the symbols in my head led us here, for a purpose.
We are unfolding and holding together the status quo, the stage of our expectation.
What if it doesn't work?
It's gonna work.
What if it doesn't?
It's gonna work. It'll work.
Every day is the potential that you have created in this field of vast potentials based on your thoughts, which is your energy. It takes an enormous amount of energy to keep an enemy and keep them in your mind. In order to create your future, you must dissolve these thoughts of the past in order to make room for the future.
We have been watching you a long, long time.
You have fought for Optimus, our last descendant, with courage and with sacrifice, the virtues of a leader. A leader worthy of our secret. The matrix of leadership is not found, it is earned. Return now to Optimus. Merge the matrix with his spark. It is, and always has been, your destiny.
Once you change your focus, the past will dissolve and your energy that holds them together will be liberated, so what you want can be reformed and reimagined. Our brain primarily talks to itself and to the rest of the body, not with words or images, or even bits or chemical impulses, but in the language of wave interference, the language of phase, amplitude, and frequency, which is called spectral domain. We perceive an object by resonating with it, getting in sync with it. To know the world is literally to be on its wavelength. When we look at something, we don't see the image of it in the back of our heads or in the back of our retinas, but in three-dimensional and out in the world. We are creating and projecting a virtual image of the object out in space, in the same place as the actual object, so that the object and our perception of the object coincide. The art of consciousness is one of transforming. We create space and time on the surface of our retinas. Like a hologram, the lens of the eye picks up certain interference patterns and then converts them into three-dimensional images. It requires this type of virtual projection for you to reach out and touch an apple where it really is and not just in our heads. We are projecting images all of the time out in space, and our image of the world is actually a virtual creation, like a video game. When you first notice something, certain frequencies resonate in the neurons in your brain. These neurons send information about these frequencies to another set of neurons. And the second set of neurons, which is like a musical chord of these resonances, and sends the resulting information to a third set of neurons, which then begins to construct a pattern that eventually will make up the virtual image you create of the apple out in space. And this threefold process makes it easier for the brain to correspond separate images in a process like a film director giving directions to a producer, cast, and crew. In every moment, our brain is making quantum choices, taking potential states and making them actual reality. And the universe is a vast dynamic cobweb of energy exchange with the basic substructure containing all possible versions of all possible forms of matter. And this field only becomes flexible when we are enlightened, when we connect the mind to our environment.
At the root of existence, mind and matter meet. Thoughts shape reality.
And what happens in this creates this in reality. The mind is our first reality, and the physical comes after. We have to take full responsibility for the reality we have created. And that's why loving yourself is forgiveness of you and what you have created out of ignorance.
I forgive you.
Forgive everyone around you. Celebrate the life you have and give life. Give consciousness and energy and knowledge. And consciousness results from super radiance, a rippling overflow of subatomic unity when individual quantum particles, such as photons, lose their individuality and begin acting as a single unit, like an army calling every soldier into line. Every motion of every particle of every biological process is mirrored in the quantum field. Our oneness extends out in the world. When we wish for something or intend something, an act that requires a great deal of unity of thought, our own oneness then becomes infectious. We are, in a sense, time and space. When we bring energy to conscious awareness with the act of perception, we create separate objects that exist in space through a measured continuum. By creating time and space, we create our own separateness. Learn to adjust and mold reality by the power of thought and emotion. The unseen actions create the fruit of the environment.
For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes, even between the land and the ship.
Our wishes and intentions create our reality. By moving energy from the base of your spine to the midbrain between our neocortices, that energy is given to the brain so that the brain is cleaned out, so that then who you were disappears, what you felt disappears, what you are worried about disappears. All other things are wiped clean in the brain because if the brain is the mechanism for creating tangible reality via thoughts, then we have to clean it up and get it pure so that whatever we place in here, the frontal lobe, as a focused, conscious thought will manifest out here in your environment in absolute clarity. Electrons with positrons and neutrons and neutrinos, it's all based on an attitude. And I'll try to summarize quantum mechanics by the film Cinderella. The molecular structures that make up a pumpkin also have a potential to be a carriage. All we have to do is change the intent. When she surrenders to her divine director, her fairy godmother shows up, and every rag has a potential of being beautiful. It is based on her intent. And the magic wand is the intent. They all have the potential in one reincarnation to become what they transformed into. The intent and magic just sped up their reincarnation and made the mice to white horses. And she longed for reality to go to this ball, and the impression of her divine director created that reality because she longed for it. The reality then came looking because without her, that reality would not exist. And the biology and the ontology that create a stable organism can be changed by the observer to become any part of its potential reality. We don't have to look outside of ourselves to find our fairy godmother. It is our divine director, the spirit inside of us. It has been holding and directing your reality as we continually declare and expect it to be. Everything that already exists can be changed when you are changed. This is how a master can turn water into wine and a rock into gold. All we need is a new attitude, an attitude of what perceives what will be, which causes the disintegration of what was to become what will be. We must become reborn, an evolution of molecular and purified intent. Quantum mechanics says any particle, any electron exists simultaneously in every dimension as everything other than what it presently seen is.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon?
Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself.
every subatomic particle as the divine director, we expect energy to be that electron. That electron exists simultaneously outside of our observation as every other particle potential in every other time, including this one. We observe energy according to our attitude, and all energy matches that attitude. We then have selected out of a continuum of potential a limited reality. This attitude is also potentially an attitude of immortality. So who is creating your reality? You are. You think you're nearsighted? You are near-mindedness. You think you are far-sighted? You throw away everything out there and postpone it. We're everything we think we are, and that is the way it is. In order for the world to change, we must look to the tiny.
It is like a seed. A single grain of mustard seed, which a woman took and sowed in her garden. And it grew, and it grew. And the birds of the air made nests in its branches.
Like the mustard seed, to see, for when we do, the kingdom of heaven will appear, because we will have the attitude to be able to see it, and then it will appear. Every tiny molecule is a compressed program, a circuitry pre-programmed and animated with intent. The brain's job is to create thought in 4 dimensions, which then can transfer thought into the midbrain, where it is processed into chemicals. When the body is in tune with the divine director, it creates harmony, which equals whatever your divine director thinks, the body becomes. And the body is a giant laboratory. The brain is where the alchemist works to transfer thoughts in the biological material that can be then sent to every cell in the DNA to come unraveled at the place to where the thought exists, and have a fax made of that copy, and then that fax is sent through a little machinery inside of the cell that creates chains of amino acids. Amino acids are tiny strands that make up small proteins. They are particles of variance of human intent. And this little cell creates a bead of these, a necklace, which reconfirms itself to attitudes. Hormones are made out of proteins or amino acids, and it takes amino acids to make proteins. They are tiny beads of amino acids. There is an amino acid for every attitude, and how we place the amino acids represents and reflects exactly the thought happening up in the brain. So every thought you think transfers into amino acid chains, peptides, and they now flow through the bloodstream, which tells and teaches the cells everything you are listening to. This is why a closed mind starves the body and feeds it only energy of victimization, suffering, and limited thinking. This is why an open mind is so important to gain knowledge through evolution to change our realities. When we look at our life, then we can see the cause of everything, our own abuse of power to imagine. If you feel lost or have lost control, you have just lost the ability to dream. Rising like the phoenix means to banish out paradigms and programs of the past. We have to burn the nest and have a new purified intent to be reborn, to be free. All miracles happen when we hold the dream and never give up trying to figure out what they are going to be made of. No people, places, things, times, and events, because that is based upon personality, memory, which are the coagulated particles of reality that are holding it out here in front of you. Hold on to your dreams and insist that it becomes your reality, because then it will come looking for you.
I'm frightened, Mr. Lizard.
What?
I'm only a girl, not a princess.
And I'm only a lizard, not a footman. Enjoy it while it lasts.
To change the program, the anatomy of the body, is to hold a feeling of what it is to be healed, young, wealthy, inspired, whatever you want to be, every day. Then the body will experience that because it already exists in your first reality, the mind. We are divine beings wearing a body that we mold with our divine director. When we change our mind, our reality is going to change, pure and simple. This discovery gives explanations to the theory of consciousness, of the Holy Spirit, our divine director, and the science of religion and faith. These theories create unity and purpose to our world, where past discoveries have been about separation. So ask for something that you've never had. There's an art to a long thought. Focus for 3 days and 3 nights of sincere focus and hold it. And don't ask for money or it will fry you. Just become the experience of the thing desired. Create the picture so your divine director can look at it. The permeation of becoming what you say, the hardwiring, is the perfume of the flower, is the sheer joy of being joy, the smell of thought into matter that has become. It is the experience of feeling great when you wake up in the morning because you have fueled your cells consistently over a period of time. You must be the excellent gardener who nourishes it in the simple requirements of letting your divine director see it, saying who you are, and letting the sun shine upon it and living it. And then you begin to produce your own energy machine. And the universe will provide all the things that you need, provided that you execute the procedure of an in-depth conscious focus, which means that you desire the experience, the intentional manifestation, and willfully engage it. The experience will then bring that adventure and bring it into manifestation. If it doesn't happen, either you don't want it, you don't want to change because of it, or you doubt your focus, your reality, and people, places, things, times, and events, and ideas is where your mind is. That is the ripple, the frequency specific that begins to encompass all other frequency specifics of other minds that begin to come together in harmony, in union. The mind is the only reality. Mind is the quantum field to spring up these ideas into physical reality. Wealth is not about value. It is about the unlimited use of energy. Every day embrace that you are fabulously wealthy and that nothing in you has to answer to whether you deserve it or not. It is no longer a question. The desire and embracing of unlimited energy is worth going after. Never ever pay attention to lack again. Use your will, the desire to be whatever you want.
When you were younger, did you ever think if you looked away from something that it may just disappear?
The ability to focus and manifest anything because the thing is incidental. It is the journey, the experience the divine director is interested in. It wants the wisdom to externalize you forever and ever. You are only going to get what is equal to your desirability, your hunger, your passion, your devotion, your sincerity. The consciousness and energy originally created the dream and then reflected it back, engaged it, and then got wisdom, which is the jewel of the experience. We must find the passion in our lives. Passion is the desire to hold your dream in the forefront of your consciousness and to never give up through the labyrinth of everyday life. You are overcome with spirit, the idea, the desire, the surrender of what you say and think. You let go of words and become them and set in motion the energy to unfold it to its most unconditional intensity. You know that you will never be betrayed because you are the one in control with the power of your will. Your consciousness becomes a fire like the phoenix and will live forever. And this is the art of consciousness.